This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Yunxiao's body trembled as he said in a deep voice, "It really is the structure of everything?" I wasn't sure at first, but it seems like it's very likely to be true. If this infinity is a structure, then how big is this Noah's ship? What? You said this is Noah's ship. Feiyang rushed out quickly and said with a cold face, "What's going on?" His spiritual sense could still see an endless three-dimensional structure. For a moment, everyone's eyes fell on Yunxiao and Li, and their gazes were filled with strong killing intent. Now that they had entered the sealed space, everyone's emotions were slowly becoming impetuous. Yunxiao's face was extremely serious as he spread out his divine sense infinitely, but he could not find the end of these small balls. "Kid, I'm asking you a question." Feiyang was filled with irritation and anxiety. With a clench of his hand, Yunxiao was instantly sucked into the emperor aura of the 9 heavens. He clutched his throat with one hand and said in a cold voice, "I really hate that stinky face of yours. I really want to blow it up with one palm." He raised his left hand and said coldly, "If you make me unhappy again, your face will really explode." Che Shuyao's eyes were cold. The wounds on his body had not recovered yet, and a part of his soul had been taken away, which could not be cured by ordinary pills. He shouted, "A thief, just kill him, what's the point of being so long-winded?" "Humph." The thief lord snorted. "He might be of some use. Tell me, what do these things have to do with Noah's ship?" Yunxiao was unable to move under the pressure of the other party's aura. His eyes grew cold as he said, "If you want to know, then let go. Otherwise, if I'm not happy, don't even think about knowing anything." "You coward." Feiyang flew into a rage, and his heart was a little frightened by the other party's cold stare. He could not help but be shocked. He was a martial sovereign of the 9 heavens, a supreme existence. How could a martial grandmaster child have such a creepy gaze? A chill rose in his heart, which strengthened his killing intent. But his desire for Noah's ship made him suppress his anger. He loosened his fingers and let go of Yunxiao, then said expressionlessly, "Hurry up and tell me." Yunxiao's cold eyes swept over his face and he said, "The so-called structure is what the great alchemists in ancient times called the combination of all things. It says that everything in the world, including humans, is made up of many tiny substances. Those substances are spherical like the one in front of you, and they are known as the structure of all things." "That's fucking nonsense. You mean these things are actually Noah's ship?" Feiyang cursed in disbelief. His eyes flickered as he said, "And all living things are formed by these small balls?"
Ha!
"That's ridiculous." Li said, "It's also recorded in the ancient books of the demon race. The structure of all things is that they have no history, no height, no weight, no exterior, no interior, no exterior, no interior, no person, no self, no anger." "What nonsense are you talking about?" "Shut up." Feiyang felt a wave of irritation and shouted, "I just want to know how to get this Noah's ship. If no one finds out, you'll all die." The hostility on his body grew stronger and stronger. In the face of such a precious treasure, the higher one's cultivation level, the more they would be unable to remain calm. Because at their level, it was very difficult to make any further progress, and the benefits Noah's ship would bring them were also greater. Yunxiao turned his head and his eyes fell on Tang Jie, who looked nervous. "Young Master Tang, what are you holding in your hand? Let's show it to everyone." Tang Jie's heart tightened, and he could not help but take a step back. However, everyone's eyes were focused on his hand, and he suddenly clenched it even tighter. "This is the key? Take it out and let everyone study it. I'm sure you don't know how to use it." Yunxiao's voice was very calm, and no expression could be seen on his face. "You have the key?" Feiyang was shocked and struck out with his palm. Tang Jie was instantly suppressed by him, and the thing in his hand was directly ejected and flew into his hand. "You." Tang Jie was suppressed by a huge force and spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with extreme unwillingness. Everyone looked over and saw that Feng Yi was holding a diamond-shaped crystal in his hand. It looked extremely ordinary and did not seem to be any different. Tell me, how do I use this key? How can I open Noah's ship? Feng Yi suddenly grabbed, and Tang Jie's body immediately froze in the air, completely under his control. At this moment, his cultivation was the highest among all of them, and he was determined to get Noah's ship. Tang Jie's eyes were filled with hatred as he gritted his teeth and said, "The key is divided into yin and yang. I only have the yang key. I can't open Noah's ship unless I find the yin key." Feng Yi's eyes were filled with ferocity as he shouted, "What about the yin key?" Tang Jie knew that his chances of survival were not high, so he became stubborn and sneered, "God knows where it is. You're looking for death." Femi pointed his finger and directly pierced Tang Jie's shoulder blade. He grimaced in pain and wished he was dead. "Give me the yang key, the yin key is with me, only I can open it." Suddenly, Yi Fan said calmly. There were no fluctuations in his tone, but everyone was shocked as they stared at him in shock. "You think you're from the Temple of Holy Fire?" Tang Jie was shocked. Yi Fan lightly nodded, his gaze landing on the rhombus-shaped crystal in the Fief Lord's hand as he revealed a look of desire. "Give it to me. I can open it and find Noah's ship." Feng Yi frowned and sneered, "You can just bring the yin key over." "No." Yi Fan shook his head, "I can't." "What?" Everyone was stunned and seemed to be in deep thought. The space suddenly became extremely quiet. Everyone was making their own plans, but the one with the highest chance of winning was undoubtedly Feng Yi and little Qing. Qing Zhu's expression was calm, but its eyes were flickering with a cold light as it watched everything. If he could really find Noah's ship, he would never give up. Yi Fan slowly took off his shirt, revealing his muscular upper body. His skin was bronze and there was a palm-sized birthmark on his chest. That birthmark was exactly the same as the diamond-shaped crystal in Feng Yi's hand. "This is Jianjia." Everyone was dumbfounded. Yi Fan pointed at the birthmark and said, "The so-called yin key is the mark that has been passed down from generation to generation in the Temple of Holy Fire. Give me the yang key, only I can open Noah's ship." Feng Yi sneered and threw Tang Jie far away. He then pulled Yi Fan over and grinned, "If I really can't open it, it won't be too late to let you try." The diamond-shaped crystal in his left hand was placed on the mark on Yi Fan's chest, as if he wanted to see if he could sense anything. Sure enough, the two identical things fit perfectly together. At this moment, a red light shot out from the imprint on Yi Fan's body, shining directly on the diamond-shaped crystal. The crystal gave off a warm light that gradually spread in all directions, getting stronger and stronger. Wherever the light passed, all forces retreated. Feng Yi was also touched by the light and felt a great pain. He hurriedly let go and retreated. Yi Fan was overjoyed, he stretched out his hand to grab the crystal, but it seemed like he was also pushed out. He screamed and was sent flying, leaving only the crystal shining in the air, becoming stronger and stronger. The crystal was as clear as a mirror. It was so smooth that it reflected everyone's appearance, and the endless structure was also reflected in it. What's going on? We're about to receive news about these things. Feng Yi looked in shock at the structure of everything that filled the entire space. One by one, they turned into light and rapidly surged into the crystal. It was like a river pouring into the sea, surging violently. In the diamond-shaped crystal, the shadow of a small boat emerged. As the structures continued to pour in, it became more and more clear. Not only that, but a powerful weapon reserve power was emitted from the crystal at this moment, filling the entire space and shocking everyone. Noah's ship, it's really Noah's ship. Feng Yi was so excited that they didn't know what to do. The rest of the people also widened their eyes in shock as they watched the small boat in the crystal continue to appear. Moreover, this powerful artifact energy was getting stronger and stronger, suppressing everything in the entire space. It was getting harder and harder for them to circulate their yuan power. "Noah's ship is mine." Feng Yi roared and could no longer remain calm. He rushed over in an instant, trying to seize the crystal. The rhombus-shaped crystal was still absorbing the structure and emitting a clear light. Everyone knew that it was very dangerous at this time, but with the huge temptation in front of them, they could not care about it. Just as Feng Yi was about to make its move, little Qing also moved. A bolt of lightning energy was extremely fast, directly catching up to the thief and blasting it. The lightning energy spread out in the air, turning into a sea of lightning that covered the thief. Feng Yi's face was filled with anger as he threw out a punch. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically. He was shocked to find that his Emperor Qi of the Nine Heavens was also constantly suppressed by the weapon accumulation coming from the crystal, getting weaker and weaker. Qing was in the same situation. The lightning hell had just expanded when it suddenly began to shrink. The fist of the thief blasted into it and exploded the prison of thunder, which seemed to be disappearing. As the two of them fought, the others didn't dare to fall behind and took action one by one. Ngu Duongyu, stay here. Che Shuyao endured the extreme discomfort in his body, took a few steps in the air, and blocked Ngu Duongyu. He then swept his leg across the boat. Ngu Duongyu dodged it easily, and the sword in its hand created countless sword flowers in the air, flying toward Che Shuyao's vital parts. These sword lights actually broke through his layers of Emperor Qi and cut his body. Che Shuyao was shocked. Under normal circumstances, a sword light like Ngu Duongyu would not be able to cause him any harm, but it did. What's going on? Why isn't his cultivation being suppressed? Che Shuyao's feet quickly tapped on the ground, and his entire body hurriedly retreated. He couldn't figure it out at all, and his face was filled with shock and confusion. Ngu Duongyu also felt strange. His power was obviously suppressed, and the Emperor Qi was getting weaker and weaker as the crystal emitted a powerful weapon essence. However, the sword in its hand could easily exert a great power, which even made it feel surprised. Could it be that this sword has some profound secrets? It definitely was. That Li Yunxiao's background is extremely mysterious, and the sword he gave must be extraordinary. Ngu Duongyu was overjoyed, and its eyes were filled with killing intent. It raised its long sword again and its body shot forward like a cannonball, slashing at Che Shuyao. One more person died meant one more chance to get Noah's ship. Che Shuyao's steps were extremely profound, and after dodging a few times, he couldn't withstand Ngu Duongyu's frenzied attacks. His left hand flashed, and he grabbed a battle spear to meet the attack. Bang! The sword and the spear collided with each other, and a huge force gushed out, forming a pressure that spread out, directly sending the two of them flying. What's going on? How can he have such great strength? Che Shuyao looked at the battle spear in his hand in shock. This spear was a level 8 weapon. Even in normal times, it couldn't exert 100% of its power. However, the casual attack just now seemed to have exerted a huge force. Ngu Duongyu was also shocked. It found that its sword was completely suppressed by the spear. The collision of the two profound armaments immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone's strength was getting weaker and weaker. The power of the profound armament that had just burst out seemed a little unbelievable. After a moment of surprise, the Feng Yi came back to his senses and pointed at the prison of thunder. With a whooshing sound, a passage was cut open, splitting the sea of thunder and lightning into two. He turned into a beam of light and flew through the middle. Even though the two of them were greatly suppressed, he was still far stronger than little Qing. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of him. It was Tang Jia, who had already reached out to grab the diamond-shaped crystal. Bastard, stop. Noah's ship is mine. Feng Yi was shocked and furious. He gathered all the energy in his body into his fist and smashed it out, sending a fist light across the sky. To be able to perform such a domineering punch in such a suppressed environment, everyone's heart trembled, feeling an extremely great deterrence. Tang Jia's expression changed in horror. Let alone releasing his vital qi, even condensing some vital qi to circulate within his body had become extremely difficult. He hurriedly retreated, not daring to take out the diamond-shaped crystal. He even pointed out a few spells and shouted, "Saber." A ray of red light flashed on his fingertip. The vermilion bird saber was connected to his mind. Although it was taken by you, he could still sense it from afar and could attack with one move. After the vermilion bird saber fell into his hand, Tang Jie's expression changed slightly. He felt an unprecedented surge of power on the blade. At this moment, he felt that his connection with the blade had become closer. After a shock, he was overjoyed. His eyes burst out with a strong killing intent as he stared at Feng Yi heading towards the diamond-shaped crystal and slashed down. Go to hell. Great cross void slash. A bright red firebird appeared from the blade, chirping happily in the air. It released a soul-shaking pressure and flew away. Artifact spirit transformation. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. Even Tang Jie himself was shocked. He was so shocked that he couldn't believe it. He looked at the vermilion bird saber in his hand and the firebird that had transformed from the saber in horror. He was somewhat dumbfounded. Feng Yi sucked in a breath of cold air and his face turned pale on the spot. Under the transformation of the saber's gleam, he could only feel a wave of killing intent passing through his body. His entire body was in the danger of death and all the pores on his body opened up because of the chill. Ever since he had advanced to the martial supreme realm, he had never been in such a dangerous situation. Swimming dragon shadow slanted cover. Under the will of death, the potential in his body burst out and broke through the suppression for a short time. The Emperor Qi of the Nine Heavens gathered around his body and turned into a golden light as fast as lightning. He broke through the pressure of the vermilion bird saber and escaped. Although he managed to dodge the might of the saber, the suppressive force of the surrounding environment was even more powerful. His essence, qi, and spirit were emptied, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. In the entire space, other than the diamond-shaped crystal that was continuously absorbing the structure of all things, everyone was dumbfounded in shock, unable to understand the scene before them. He had almost killed a martial emperor with one slash. After Tang Jie's slash, not only did the aura on the blade not decrease, but it also became stronger and stronger. It emitted an extremely strong weapon accumulation that densely covered the surrounding space, as if it had formed its own territory. What's going on? The vermilion bird saber's power seemed to have been fully unleashed, but how could do it? Even if it's an ordinary martial emperor, it's impossible for him to fully unleash the power of a 9th-tier profound weapon. You looked at the saber barrier around Tang Jie in shock, as if he would be completely shattered by the Peerless saber light if he was in it. Don't tell me it's Qian? Li's eyes flashed with a hint of understanding. She took the small drum from her waist and patted it gently. Bang. It was just an ordinary beating, but the sound of the drum shook the entire space. It was as if the endless world was about to collapse. Everyone felt as if a huge stone had struck their hearts, and their expressions changed drastically. The martial royal realm experts of the Holy Fire Palace, who had lower cultivation, instantly spat out a mouthful of blood. Their faces were pale and they were terrified. The area around Li also started to change due to the appearance of the battle drum. Just like the vermilion bird saber, it formed its own territory. I see. Yunxiao's eyes flickered as he said, I understand. Under the suppression of Noah's ship, this was actually a space constructed by the rhythm of the mystic artifact. As Noah's ship gradually appeared, the power of all living creatures was constantly suppressed, and the profound level weapon was constantly strengthened under the influence of this power. At some point, Yunxiao's figure had appeared beside the diamond-shaped crystal, and a miniature bell kept conjuring in his palm, emitting a powerful artifact aura that almost suppressed the entire area. Just sensing the power of the bell was enough to make one's hair stand on end. The same bell domain appeared around him, exuding an ancient charm. He glanced at the people in the air and his eyes landed on Che Shuyao and Feng Yi. His eyes were cold and he said, Martial sovereigns, you guys were really cool at the start. Feng Yi was taken aback as he stared at the miniature bell in Yunxiao's hand in horror. He sensed a power that was even more powerful than the vermilion bird saber. He hurriedly took out his 5 elements beast taming ring. Although it was an incomplete 9th-tier profound artifact, it still emitted a barrier to protect him. Feeling the protection of the surging power, his heart calmed down a little. Che Shuyao hurriedly took out a few parts of a rod and formed a spear in front of him. The minute traces of the 8th grade profound artifact also spread out continuously. Although it couldn't form its own territory, it was still extremely powerful. As for the rest of the people who did not have powerful profound level weapons, their expressions changed drastically, and their bodies turned cold. In this battlefield, they had undoubtedly been excluded. Noah's ship was completely hopeless, and their lives were in the hands of others at any time. The most miserable ones were Little Qing, the Rat Emperor, and the nine-winged spirit snake bird. They didn't even have a first-tier profound level weapon, let alone a high-tier one. Lord Martial Sovereigns, didn't you say you wanted to see why I'm so awesome? A cold smile flashed across Yunxiao's face as he said in a cold voice, I seem to remember someone saying that he wanted to crush my balls to see? The ancient bell in his hand grew rapidly, and the bell territory expanded, making everyone's faces change color. Fanny and Che Shuyao's faces turned grave, and they couldn't hide their fear. The dynasty bell, one dynasty is a century. The dynasty bell was slapped by him, and the tremendous power of sound waves pushed the space in all directions. Everyone saw the space shake. What was even more terrifying was that the power of the sound waves vibrated through his body, almost destroying his physical body and meridians one by one. His entire person almost collapsed. Especially the few martial emperors from the Palace of Holy Fire. Under this sound wave, they completely lost their combat power and their bodies were on the verge of collapse. Feng Yi's pupils shrank. He had also discovered that the ancient bell was a genuine ninth-tier profound artifact. He hurriedly threw out the 5 elements beast taming ring. 5 huge rats appeared around him, letting out squeak sounds, as if they still had intelligence. In the distance, the Rat Emperor's eyes were red and he was grimacing in pain. But at this moment, he was completely disabled. Not to mention saving others, even his own life and death were not in his control. Boom. The huge bell domain directly collided with the 5 elements beast taming ring. Under the collision of the 2 domains, the 5 elements beast taming ring was obviously much weaker. As soon as it touched the ring, it was pushed back and showed signs of collapse. The 5 rat kings were also affected and screamed in pain. World's Pride Spear. Che Shuyao roared and the spear in his hand shot out towards the dynasty bell. At this moment, he and his fief were both in an unprecedented danger. If they could not work together to suppress each other, this sealed space would be the last stop in their lives. Dang. The dynasty bell was pierced by the spear rhythm and let out a sound that seemed to have been passed down for a long time. It rang in space, time, and even in everyone's soul. Everything in the world, including the universe's time and space, seemed to be stopped at this moment and entered an extreme silence. Yunxiao's eyes flickered, and his face was filled with shock as he muttered to himself, is this the full power of the dynasty bell? That bell can actually travel back and forth between the past and the present, shaking the entire universe.